Sorry, another little high-level one there. All right, so then you turn the page. Page 23 starts in on dimension 1, and 24 is where it actually starts digging into more what this looks like in your classroom, at least in their indicator language. So, just looking at me on the front, remember we had 1, 2, 3, right? 3 breakouts here, 3 pieces to that puzzle around asking questions. So they have 1, 2, 3 indicators, as they call them. Then what they did is they took the indicator and broke it down into grade bands. So what would this look like in the K2, the 3-5, the 6-8, or the 9-12 classroom? So we're asking students to ask questions, or we're talking about this idea of questions in my classroom. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that we are going to ask students to construct compelling questions. We're going to ask them to also construct supporting questions around those larger compelling questions. And we're also going to help them determine helpful sources. So those are 3 ideas that you could use in your classroom as you're bringing the content to students. And most likely you're doing this already, which is probably why you're here. But then if you want more detail on what that looks like, then what they do is they give you specific language then in the boxes that says, well, if I'm in the middle school and I'm having students construct compelling questions, students should be able to explain how a question represents key ideas in the field, and they should be explaining their points of agreement that the experts have around interpretations and applications of the content, okay, as it's associated with a question they may raise. So most likely, you're here because you are trying to find another, or you already are using a different way. You don't necessarily have the textbook in front of the kids. You're telling them to turn to chapter 1, read the chapter, answer the questions at the back. You're obviously here because you're not doing that. You may know of people either in your own district or others that do that still. If that is the case, this is a framework or a guide to help them imagine what's life without the book. Well, it's a series of presenting or having students ask questions around given content. You still need the book for them to get that content knowledge in some respects, but there's another approach, and this offers an opportunity around what that structure might look like, specifically having students ask questions, and that's dimension 1, and they try to give you those ideas. The reason I want to share this with you is that when we write our questions, we are going to be asked to find the C3 framework that would support students possibly answering that question. Okay? So that's one thing that is going to come into play as we go through this work together. If you go on to the next page, the next section, it's section that starts on 29. It digs into those more grade band-like details for the different grade levels as you move through. So this is actually economics. Let me find the one that's history. So history starts, which is dimension 2, on page 46. So within history, the first one is change, continuity, and context. And so they give you those indicators. So if you're so I'm looking at by the end of grade 8, so I'm looking at the purple by the end of grade 8, I'm looking at this second purple box. I think we saw questions already today that had kids classify a series of historical events and developments as examples of change or continuity. I think we saw that already in a couple questions where they were talking about the series of events, right? We talked about different events and how they might have had an impact on the world. And kids had, so that could be an alignment to a couple of the questions we've already seen today. So this is one lens that we're going to ask you to go back and identify your question around. So I wanted you to get aware of the C3 standards and kind of get to know what they're, sorry, I keep saying that, the C3 framework, because it's not truly standards. I don't want to mix that up. So to clarify, you still are teaching to the content expectations, but the C3 framework is a guide that we can use to revise and move forward. And we are going to align our questions that we create to this. And this, don't worry about this part of it so much, but I want you to be aware we're going to try to make that connection. Okay? I want to give you a second to continue to look through this. I'll just give you a couple minutes, and then you can generate questions or other thinking, and I'll come and check in on your tables. All right? Any questions that you might have?